Hi, Right Riders, Cruz here. Thank you so much for joining me. In this video, we are going to be taking the IELTS on computer. This I found after digging around a little bit on the website. So they have the academic writing test, but I want to do the first one, and I just sort of clicked on it to make sure that there was something there and I was able to access it. And then I also saw the IELTS on computer general training writing test. So I would actually like to do this with you, Right Writers. I also checked to see if I needed to include any of this information, and you don't. You can just click on my details are correct, and it takes you right to a prompt. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that now. And so basically, it's telling us answering both parts. You have an hour. You can change your answers. Part two contributes twice as much as part one to the writing score, and the test clock will show you when there are 10 minutes and 5 minutes remaining, and that there are two parts in the test. So, obviously, it's usually recommended, I think, with the first part to just take 20 minutes. So, I'm going to, if it has that timer, Right, writers, I'm definitely going to be a stickler about just making sure that I stop once the timer hits the 40-minute mark, because then I know I will have typed for 20 minutes and hopefully I will have the right word count. So let me go ahead and click the start test. And so as you can see here, just kind of looking at it with me, I've got now timer has already started. So they really don't give you any time to sort of you just jump in and you better start looking at the graph. So I've got 20 minutes here. So let me go ahead and get started, right riders. The chart below shows the number of trips made by children in one country in 1990 and 2010 to travel to and from school using different modes of transport. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so I'm definitely going to make sure that I mention my prompt right away. So I definitely want to make sure that I do that. And then I can see here, again, the travel to and from school. They give me the age, children aged 5 to 12. On the left here, we see the, looks like the number of trips, total number of trips um, per year in the millions. And so that's what I see there. And it looks like they pretty much stop at, 14 million. And then down below, we see 1990 is in black and in this graph. And then 2010, we can see contains stripes. So the first thing that I may want to look at is just sort of looking at the graph itself. It looks like um, really the number one way that students got to school in 1990, and that was like close to a little over 12 million, was by walking, believe it or not. And then it looks like in 2010, that changed dramatically. And now it looks like 2010 with the stripes, the number one way was car passenger. So that's something that's very interesting. Some things that I'm just seeing based on the graph. As far as not much of a difference between 1990 and 2010, that would definitely be this area here. And apparently that involves going on the bus. So that not much difference there. And then it looks like cycling was not very popular as walking, not as popular in 2010, but it was more popular in 1990 than it was in 2010. And cycling and walking in 1990 was almost really the same. So I think that that's really interesting in 1990, where it was pretty much oh, I'm sorry, not cycling and walking. Walking and the bus. So walking and then taking a bus. So my bad, right riders. That is not accurate what I was just talking about because I was just looking at the top part and did not scroll down. So noted. All right, so let's go ahead, right, writers. I've got looks like 56 minutes and 30 seconds left. So let's see if I can go ahead and I'm just going to click on some buttons to see. Okay, it looks like clicking on this or something. Maybe I want to be able to type here. Okay, good. It does let me type. So let's take a look here. Um, how am I going to start this? So 1990 to 2010, so 1990 to 2000 is 10 years. Obviously, 2000 to 2010 is 10 years. So let's take it as a two decades or 20-year time span. Um, so let's see how I want to start this. How children between the ages of 5 and 12 arrive to school. How children between the ages of 5 and 12 arrive to school has changed over the decades. How children between the ages of 5 and 12 arrive to school has changed over the decades. And maybe I will say when it comes to transportation, how children between the ages of 5 and 12 arrive to school has changed over the decades. In 1990, walking was the most popular type of trip made by young people. In 1990, walking was the most popular type of trip made by young people. So, walking in 1990, a little over 12 million trips, right, writers. Children made a little over 12 million trips using their own 2 feet. However, so it's I think it said car passenger. So it looks like it's about 11 million trips, car passenger trips, based on the features in the graph here. So yeah, about 11 million. Children made a little over 12 million trips using their own 2 feet. However, So obviously, children really don't drive in that age range. So I'm going to say, however, the adults in their life, however, the adults in their lives took charge in 2010. However, the adults took charge in their lives took charge in 2010 because by then 11 million trips were made to school. However, the adults in their lives took charge in 2010 because by then 11 million trips were made to school via car passenger. Okay, that's definitely something that is of note. So I sort of did a comparison, and now it looks like, again, um, cycling, walking, and bus, and just bus were almost the same, around 6 million. So I've got really 10 minutes remaining, right, riders, and I'm at 70 words. So 11 million trips were made via to school via car passenger. And I'm going to say with children as car passengers, with children as car passengers. Okay, let's go with that. In 1990, children took trips to school via cycling, bus riding, and walking. In 1990, children took trips via cycling, bus riding, and walking. Took trips to school via cycling, bus riding, walking, and walking with bus riding. Okay, in 1990, children took around the same number of trips to school via cycling, bus riding, and walking with bus riding. The number of trips made lingered around 6 to 7 million within each category. And then basically, I mean, it was walking, bus, and car passenger really was the top. Um, in 2010, however, rather in 2020, um, and bus trips. However, in 2020, car passenger walking, and bus trips were the dominant modes of transportation. 45 minutes remaining. So when I see that 45 minutes, right, riders, it's time to stop. Um, I have 44 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. However, in 2020, car passenger, walking, and bus trips were the dominant modes of transportation. Um, I mean, but really, if you look at it again, look at this walking versus car passenger. So, car trips again, 11 versus 12. But what's interesting is sort of like these, the cycling, walking, and bus was definitely vastly different. Um, you know, so that's something that's interesting. Let's see what else I can say here. And I mean, car passenger was the lowest. So in 1990. So I think that's interesting with 4 million. Um, let's see what I have so far, right, writers. I've got 43 minutes remaining. When it comes to transportation, how children between the ages of 5 and 12 arrived to arrive to school has changed over the decades. In 1990, walking was the most popular type of trip made by young people. Children made a little over 12 million trips using their own 2 feet. However, the adults in their lives took charge in 2010 because by then, 11 million trips were made to school with children as car passengers. In 1990, children took around the same number of trips to school via cycling, bus riding, and walking with bus riding. Um, the number of those trips made, of those types of trips made, lingered around 6 to 7 million within each category. However, in 2020, car passenger, walking, bus trips were the dominant modes of transportation. Ultimately, much can change in 20 years. Ultimately, much can change in 20 years because, well, the number of car trips in 1990 was just over 4 million. That number nearly, okay, 41 minutes remaining, right, riders? So really like 1 minute for me. Um, that number nearly, so it went from 4 to 8 um, to 11, almost tripled. That number more than doubled to 11 million trips in 2010. Okay, let me see if that's correct. Yes, 11, around 11 million. And right riders, literally, it's just going to hit the 40-minute mark. Okay, so I made it to 155 words. So I did it, right riders. Boy, is it helpful having the word count right there. That's awesome. And as you can see, the timer's still going for the next part of the passage, but here it is, right riders. So I'm going to go ahead. I mean, I definitely hit the timer. I would then move on to academic writing part two. But let's go ahead and let me read what we have here. When it comes to transportation, how children between the ages of 5 and 12 arrive to school has changed over the decades. In 1990, walking was the most popular type of trip made by young people. Children made a little over 12 million trips using their own 2 feet. However, the adults in their lives took charge in 2010 because by then 11 million trips were made to school with children as car passengers. In 1990, children took around the same number of trips to school via cycling, bus riding, and walking with bus riding. The number of those types of trips made lingered around 6 to 7 million within each category. However, in 2020, car passenger, walking, and bus trips were the dominant modes of transportation. Ultimately, much can change in 20 years because while the number of car trips made in 1990 was just over 4 million, that number more than doubled to 11 million trips in 2010. Okay, so I mean, if I had to critique myself, I probably should have given some numbers, perhaps right here, right, writers, but I wanted to kind of come full circle and end where I began. And so doing this chart, I can definitely say, right, writers, that I understand now why children, especially in the United States, why we have such high obesity rates of young people in the United States when I'm seeing this idea of walking versus being a car passenger. So I think that that's really interesting. But at the end of the day, that's just some side commentary from Cruz here. But I will say that I'm pleased with what I created under the 20-minute time frame. I definitely did it under 20 minutes, and I was able to create 155 words using this graph here to the left, looking at the total number of trips per year in millions travel to and from school by children ages 5 through 12. And I believe that I did, again, looking at 1990 to 2010, and I feel satisfied with what was created within that time frame. So, right, writers, I hope this video was helpful, useful, and inspires you to take some practice tests online. Um, and I will be doing academic writing part two online in my next video. Thank you so much, right, writers. Again, I hope this ensures your success in writing. Take care, right, writers. Cruise out. Thank you again for subscribing. I appreciate you guys doing that. Love you guys. Bye bye.